question. I think now we have to go back and go to our next speaker, who is Miss Miriam Borouah. Yeah, she's going to talk to us about how to teach reading effectively. Yes, Miriam, the floor is yours. Please
Thank you
share
so
your
much.
screen.
Yes, just a minute. Okay, can you see everything clearly? Nothing is blocking the way. You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So, hello everyone. I hope you had an amazing day. And before starting, I want to express my deepest gratitude to GDF community and to Mr. Hussein Qasras personally for this amazing opportunity. And also without forgetting the wonderful moderators, Asmae and Najwa. Thank you so much for your effort to make this webinar go as smooth as it should be. And also I want to thank other presenters for their speech. It was like music to my ears, so thank you. So my talk, as you know, is going to be about how to teach reading effectively. And we have all been students at some point of our lives. And especially when we were young, I think most of us find reading a bit boring. I mean, I personally did. When I was in high school, I used to find it boring, but the funny and questionable thing is that I felt it was boring just with some teachers. So now that I'm a certified teacher and I know the strategies and approaches teachers use, I got to, like they say, dot the E's and cross the T's, connect and reflect on why some reading classrooms were lifeless while others were not. So the objective of this talk is to make you know how to teach reading and create an engaging and a radiant classroom and lesson. As for the objective, also like the purpose of this talk is to know that I'm gonna quote word by word this amazing quote, but I found it in a book called Reading Like a Pro. No, Teach Reading Like a Pro, yes. And by the way, I advise you to read it. So the quote says, reading is so much more than starting your first word on the page and moving along each line till you get to the end. Inspire them, your students, and give them love for reading. It is easier than you think. So this is my objective, and we will see how we can achieve it. So the next slide. Okay, so before beginning, we should know two basic important things, which are the two types of reading and the two processes of understanding a text. So we have firstly the two types of reading. We have extensive reading and intensive reading. So extensive reading means reading for joy. You read for your own pleasure, not because you should or it's mandatory or you should read that book or that article or whatever. This approach can expose you to different and various range of vocabulary and grammatical structures. It can help you train your mind to try to figure out the meaning of unfamiliar word from the context without really searching word by word in your dictionary. So it will help you, and by you, I mean your students, to develop a very needed subskill that we will discover later on. So on the other hand, we have intensive reading. So in this reading, like we do it in classrooms, we follow a short text and you do its exercises for a deep and detailed understanding. This approach helps the learners to understand the target language's grammar and syntax. Thus, you will get to engage with the text and decode its deep meanings. So in classrooms, we often work only with the intensive reading materials due to the time limit. However, you can always encourage your students to read more at home and to develop themselves by themselves and not to rely only on the professor. So the second point is I want to raise here is the two processes to understand a text. And you can choose whatever you like, but variety is always better. So the first process is top down. In this one, you don't start with the text. You start from outside the text. For example, you will teach animals. In the top-down process, you will start with maybe using pictures or predicting what will the lesson be, something like this. You start from outside the text. As for the bottom-up process is simply its opposite. You start from inside the text. You go from specific to general. For example, you can select a sentence from a text, and this is specific, and from it you can pave the way to the general, which is the whole text eventually. So these approaches are vital for you to choose from and use them interchangeably. Always vary your ways of teaching, and remember, don't be stagnant. So now that we know these things, and before going to class, you should first plan your lesson and try to integrate in it as many sub-skills and skills as you can to accommodate all your learner styles. So as we saw just previously with Kautar, we know there is the auditory style, the kinesthetic, the visionary, the verbal, and many more. So you should pay close attention and try to include activities or games to satisfy all your learner styles when planning your lesson. So in this way, you will engage all your students and no one will feel as if he or she is being left behind. So in addition to that, in your plan, you should answer these following questions. What are my objectives? What am I teaching? Who am I teaching? How will I teach it? And do my students understand? So when you finish planning, try to put yourself in your students' shoes and see whether what you have come up with is relevant to them or not. And by relevant, I mean whether it's practical for their background, age, and level. So also in the planning process, or in teaching reading in general, you should be aware of the 3 reading stages. We have the pre-stage, the during stage, and the post-stage. So firstly, the pre-stage. So the pre-stage, and this is where you should prepare your students, build their interest, hook them, and activate their schemata so that they will be occupied and enthusiastic about the lesson. For example, get them to think about the topic before even opening their books. Make them predict what the lesson is going to be about. Use visual aids or lead-in questions to direct them where you want them to be headed at, or maybe make them brainstorm any ideas they have on that topic. There is many and plenty ways by which you can let your students fire. So let me explain to you what happens when you do so. So when you activate your students' schemata by making them think about what they already know on the given topic, it is more likely for them to be able to retain the new information you are going to deliver. Because first, you have motivated them and made them feel like they know a lot of things. And what you're going to deliver is simply going to add or connect with the information they already possess. And second, you gave them a purpose to read and a purpose to be engaged with you throughout the whole lesson. It's like playing with their psychology. So the only thing is that you should be really, really careful when selecting a text. It is important that your students are interested in the material. They will be more active in the discussion if they feel strongly about a particular topic. So as you can see, the pre-stage is vital if you want to have a successful lesson. I'll tell you how I see things and how I remember this. I mean, it's a funny thing, I mean, at least for me, but I'll tell you anyways. So I always associate the pre-stage and pretty much all the other stages with selling something, for instance. So in order to gain customers and your selling rate will go up, you should know how to sell your products and how to promote it. So if you don't know how to do this, you will pretty much lose a lot of energy and time and end up with no capital at the end. So this is like teaching. In this case, you should know how to sell your lesson to your students. You should give them a purpose to consume your lesson. Otherwise, you will end up with a bored class, which will lead you as a teacher to be occupied with their unhealthy noise, which will result in having a rather dismal teaching experience. And we don't want this to happen to us. So therefore, from the first place, you should lit the fire in your students and keep them engaged with you so that they will keep you engaged with their noise. So the second stage is when you start reading the text. So in this stage, you should adapt the textbook's comprehension questions based on your agenda. I mean, the textbook doesn't know your students' level and age. You are supposed to omit and add the things that you find to fit most in your classes. So for example, you can answer the comprehension questions on the text. And if you want to, you can add other questions, you can. If you want to omit other questions, you can. You can do whatever you want. So you can play with the questions, as I said, however you want. Try to start, however, just try to start with the easy questions and then build up the difficulty. And always remember, the textbook is not something sacred that is forbidden to be changed. You needed to abide by the book if you want to. Your students' level and their strength and difficulties should be the core or the basis upon which you build your lessons, not the other way around. And also in this stage, keep in mind to vary your activities and integrate other skills in it, like listening, speaking, vocab, or anything you want. I have extracted this example to better understand this theoretical part. So the text you see is about nature. So in the questions, you can see the focus here is on reading, but there are some questions where other skills are integrated in it. So as you can see in the first question, you can see the little headphones and it says, look at the picture and listen to the sound. I guess it was the sound of thunder. I don't remember, but anyways, it's something you listen to. So here you have integrated listening in reading. Then it says, how do you think you would feel if you were in this place? Here your student will talk, thus speaking is also integrated in this reading part. Then the second question has vocab. If you pre-taught vocab in the pre-stage, you can check your students' understanding even further with this question. Let's move to the fifth exercise and is integrating paraphrasing and reading for details. And here, because you will read the text and produce the answer in your own style, means writing is also integrated here. So as you can see, this reading lesson is diverse. And this is what you should do in your own lessons. Having a diverse lesson plan will enable students who are good at other aspects to still participate and feel confident in their abilities while working to improve an area they are weaker at. For example, for those who are good at speaking and want to improve their vocab or writing, they can do it, though the main focus is not vocab nor writing. So as for the last stage, which is a productive stage, the students produce their own language. In this part, try to extend the activity, think out of the box, and remember, you can always integrate other skills. So I'll give you examples. You can use an interactive approach where your students get to the chance to role play if the text was a play, or to do an interview, or even to pretend they are performing in front of the TV. They can retell the story in small groups or to you. They can collect pictures and produce one final image that summarizes the whole text, etc. There are many ways to integrate other skills and to have fun while learning. Just be productive. So now that we know the three stages, you might be asking, okay, how am I supposed to come up with my own questions and on what basis should I base them? So in this case, knowing the reading subskills is the answer to those questions. So reading has many subskills, such as you can see from the picture. So the ones that are obvious, I will explain them very briefly due to the time limit. So we have paraphrasing. So paraphrasing is to rewrite or restate something using different words. Note-taking, I love this one. Note-taking is to write down ideas from the text in short form. So in that way, after understanding the text, you can write down the main points and supporting details in an outline form. And as I said, I personally love this subskill. It will help you a lot if you want to refer back to the text when answering comprehension questions or when summarizing it. So predicting is using clues like headlines, main sentences, pictures about the text, so you can be able to form a more or less accurate picture of what the text is going to talk about. Inferring or inferences cannot be found directly in the lines of the text. You should teach your students to read between the lines, select some clues from the text, and use their critical thinking in order to deduce how the writer or speaker feels about something from the way they speak or write rather than from the way they openly say or the words they choose. Okay, this is a long sentence. I'll break it down. Inferences is when you deduce how a writer feels about something, but not from the way he or she chooses the words, but from how the way they write. So because the style by which a writer or a speaker writes or speaks is more or less unconscious, but the words chosen are most of the time conscious, and there's a lot of thinking and analysis, therefore putting them to use. So before putting them to use, I'll give you examples. So if you read a book that someone went out and slammed the door behind him, you will infer that he is mad about something. This is inferring. You get to deduce a logical conclusion just from reading between the lines and observing how the speaker or writer writes or speaks, not because he said, I am mad. Okay, so the next one is skimming. Skimming is like to read quickly for main ideas. This method can benefit your students because knowing the main idea of a text is extremely helpful for them before reading closely. They will have a general understanding and will help them read faster as well. Scanning is to read the text quickly in order to pick up specific information. So in this technique, you look for keywords, and your students get to learn to group specific letters together and quickly identify the words. It is crucial because it allows students to know how to look back in the text quickly to find the answer for the given question. We have reading for details. So in this one, this is when you pay attention to every single word and to specific details. You simply read to understand most of what the text says. As for read it for gist, you read to understand the general meaning of the text without paying much attention to the details. It could be a fast reading or a slow reading, it doesn't matter. The most important thing here is that you read to grasp the main idea of the text. So then we have proofreading. So proofreading is to read a text to check whether there are any mistakes, like spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, punctuation mistakes, etc. Summarizing, I think this one is obvious, like everyone knows it. It means to extract the main ideas of the text and to write them in a short, concise way. Editing is to correct or change some passages or parts of a text to make it clearer and easier to understand. Deducing meaning from context is to guess the meaning of unknown words from the context. So from either the situation or from the other words nearby. So using dictionary every time we encounter a new word will interrupt the flow of learning, of reading. So however, it is only possible when the text doesn't have so much difficult words. The last one is using interactive strategies. And this means to use other strategies other than words to keep people interested and engaged in what is said or to keep communication going. So you can use body language, eye contact, gestures, and all that, like everything besides words. So now we will move to the tips, and it's
Yes, Maria?
my last one. Yes.
Yeah,
how much
exactly.
time?
5 minutes.
Okay, I will do it. Thank you so much. So for the tips, okay, it's like a conclusion of what I have just said. So the first one is never ever start with the famous saying of open your book on the page blank, fill in the blank, and read the text. This traditional, no, not just traditional, this very bad habit is very, very bad. Like if not nothing, you'll end up with very little interaction and enthusiasm in your class. And we try to do our best to avoid boring and dreary classes. We should make our students love and enjoy what they learn, not turn it into a burden. So the second one is invest time to prepare your lessons. If you as a teacher are not planning, thinking, nor bringing new ideas and new concepts to your classroom, don't expect anything more than you do from your students in return. I know it will take time, it will consume energy, it will make you tired, but in return, it is super rewarding. And as Mr. Hussein Qsaras used to say, teaching is demanding, but it is rewarding at the end. So that's what counts the most. Then the third tip is, when planning your lesson, as I said earlier, take into consideration your learners' learning styles and their difficulties and strengths. We should work and give lessons and questions to empower our learners' powerful areas, and most importantly, to improve their areas that should be improved. And lastly, the last tip is, we should integrate other secondary skills along with the main focus of that session, so that the lessons won't be boring and demotivating. You should design engaging and motivating materials to meet your students' needs. After all, they are the central point of everything. The textbook is nothing more than a suggestion on what to teach and what to do in your class. It is nothing but a piece from which you get inspired to produce your own materials. As I said earlier, don't be its slave. Introduce topics of your own and try to change the students' attitudes towards reading. We all know that students can be easily turned off with pages filled with words. However, you can make their experience enjoyable. It will both benefit you and them. So reading might seem, I think I have finished. So reading might seem like an easy material to teach, but in fact, it has more layers to it that most of us seem to neglect. So now that you know those layers, I hope you will get to implement those strategies in your reading lessons to teach it effectively and neatly, of course. So I have reached the end of my talk. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Asmae, for moderating this talk. Thank you. If you have any questions. Yes,
great job, Mariam. Everyone is expressing how they love your presentation. Please, can you stop sharing your screen?
Yes.
I do have a, yes, great. Okay, so I do have a question here, but before, Miss Habiba gave us a comment, and yes, I liked it so much. She said, keep in mind that you should not explain all the difficult words that are in the text. We should only explain some of them that might block the learners, their learners
understanding.
Exactly.
Understanding.
Yes.
Also,
yes, indeed.
Exactly. So I totally agree with her. A reading lesson is not a vocabulary lesson. So if we are going to pre-teach some vocabulary, we should only select some 5 to 6 words that are really, really difficult that might block the understanding of the learners. If we start at every word, we're just going to teach the vocabulary of the lesson and not focus on the skills and the sub-skills of the reading lesson. We also have another quote that I really liked. If you fail to plan, then you are planning to fail. By the same
person. My God, I love it.
Exactly. So of course, you have to plan your lessons effectively. And if you don't, then you are planning to fail your lesson.
Yes, it's basic.
Exactly. So we have a question by Mr. Abdelmunaim Al-Kmidi.
Yes, please.
He said, how can we motivate our students to practice extensive learning? How can we motivate students to practice learning that is outside the curriculum? Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I think that learning, like most of students, acquire how they read from school. So if they experienced bad experiences and like long texts and boring texts in class, they will have like this pre-assumption that all reading materials are dull or they don't click with it, you know? So what I suggest here is that they should know their students, and the teacher should select some materials that he thinks the students will enjoy. That way they will read in class and he can select other materials to be read at home, and I think they will enjoy it. So I think the first step is that he should initiate like the part of his to select good materials and pleasant materials.
Yes, absolutely. Also, another idea is that when we, when we have extensive reading and we have intensive reading, so extensive reading is something that we choose. Intensive reading is mandatory. We cannot choose it. All right.
Yes.
So this is why we should make this reading lesson very interesting, because they did not have a choice in it. So you have to make them love the lesson. All right.
Yes,
So now
that's why, one last thing, I mean,
yes.
that's why knowing your students is vital in the planning process. You should know your students, what they like, what's their background, their age, like, so you can predict what they might enjoy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mariam, for your
amazing
presentation.
And thank you for moderation and for the comments you've received. I mean, they were amazing. Thank you.
Yes, now we will be moving to our next speaker.